A state of emergency in Manitoba this Thursday night.
Holy
The wildfires ripping through the province, forcing hundreds to flee, and the harrowing accounts around the tragic deaths of one of the fires.
They were completely surrounded by flames.
Separation anxiety. First Nations communities voice their concerns as Alberta's separatist movement gains ground. Plus, Quebec's post-election drama, the ballot sparking a legal challenge by the Bloc in a riding they lost by a single vote. And long-lost siblings from across oceans.
And I now have somebody else that I can be with.
A touching meeting between two siblings brought together by the shared history of a Canadian soldier.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with the raging wildfires in Manitoba. Premier Wab Kinew has declared a state of emergency in the southern Whiteshell area near the Ontario border. The local provincial park has been closed ahead of the busy long weekend. There are 21 active fires across the province, including an out-of-control blaze in the regional municipality of Lac Du Bonnet. Sue and Richard Nowell died trying to flee that fire. Nearly 1,000 residents have had to leave their homes. 40 firefighters from BC have arrived to help, but officials say they need at least 80 more.
We've had 80 fires to date, and the 20-year average number of fires to date is 48. So you can see that as of today, we are well above average for this time of year.
Melissa Ridgen is in Lac Du Bonnet tracking the wildfires tonight. Melissa?
Nitu, this region is still on high alert while fire crews and water bombers battle the fire. Folks are very much on edge, knowing that any shift in wind could put them in another harrowing life or death escape, as happened on Tuesday.
Oh no.
Driving towards Lac Du Bonnet, quickly ran into a wall of smoke and the fire above the trees, and I literally said in the one video I took that I may have left this too late.
Ron Burley is still reeling, knowing two people on that same burning road did not make it out.
And then when I heard yesterday that 2 people had passed away on Windigo, right away I started thinking about us driving past the road that we were looking for to get out. And had I said, you know what, let's just keep going, we likely would have came upon them if we even made it that far.
He's got to run.
Keith Gladstone knew the woman who died with her husband.
That's what I was told, that they climbed in the car and were going to take off, and all of a sudden there's a wall of fire all around them.
The son and girlfriend jumped out of the car apparently and took off on foot, and they found water. I guess they stayed in the water. And they did end up getting burned apparently, but they survived.
A cafe and resource center where the woman worked were closed Thursday. The flag in town here lowered to half-mast for the couple. The Gladstones had to flee on Tuesday. They're thankful that their home has been spared and eager for the all-clear to return.
Be nice to go back home and sleep in your own bed.
Folks are hanging on to the hope that the weather will do what it usually does here on May long weekend, pour rain. And Mother Nature looks to be on side with that. The forecast is calling for rain starting tonight and through Saturday. Nitu.
All right, Melissa Ridgen in Lac Du Bonnet, Manitoba. Thanks. In response to growing backlash from First Nations groups, the Alberta government has amended its controversial new referendum law. Legal experts don't expect the changes will derail efforts to bring the separatist debate to a vote next year. New polling suggests support for separation in Alberta is still low. But as Heather Yourex-West reports, just talk of a potential referendum is taking an economic toll.
Come join me here today.
Just a few weeks old, a new separatist political party in Alberta is hoping to elect its first MLA, giving Edmonton-Ellerslie voters an Alberta Republican candidate in an upcoming by-election.
We can forge a brighter and more prosperous future as an independent Alberta Republic.
While the majority of Albertans do not support secession, separatists are basking in a newfound spotlight as debate sparked by post-election feelings of Western alienation is now heightened at the thought of a referendum next year.
I want to respectfully remind the Premier that this land that we stand on today is treaty land, and is not yours to take or make sweeping decisions about.
First Nations groups across Alberta and Saskatchewan have been quick to denounce the Alberta government for elevating the discussion around separatism with a bill that makes it easier to bring the question to a vote. Late Wednesday, the province's Justice Minister amended the proposed legislation, saying any question won't be allowed to violate treaty. But
I think it's designed to try and deal with some of the political controversy. I mean, in law, you don't need to say you're going to follow the law.
The Onion Lake Cree Nation says it will be pushing ahead with a lawsuit against the provincial government over the province's Sovereignty Act, adding that the government's work to foster a referendum is a major concern. Business groups are worried as well.
Now is the time for unity.
Speaking to reporters after a shareholders meeting in Calgary this week, ATCO CEO Nancy Southern said separatist talk was driving investors away.
Quebec had its referendum famously over 30 years ago, but you can still feel the consequences today. Businesses race for the door.
A layer of uncertainty no business wants in the midst of a tariff trade war. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
In BC, a group of 36 First Nations is buying a stake in the Enbridge West Coast natural gas pipeline. The pipeline, built in 1957, carries gas from northeast BC and northwest Alberta all the way down to the Fraser Valley. Enbridge is selling a 12.5% stake in the project to the First Nations Partnership for $715 million. More and more First Nations are acquiring stakes in Canadian energy projects to gain economic benefits to help fund housing and infrastructure on their own land. Hudson's Bay is getting a second life with a new owner. Canadian Tire says it will pay $30 million to the beleaguered retailer and Canada's oldest company. The sale includes the Hudson's Bay brand, its multicolored stripes motif, its coat of arms, and other brand trademarks. The sale still needs court approval. Hudson's Bay put its assets up for sale after it filed for creditor protection in March. The leader of the Bloc Québécois says he wants a new election in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne, and he's willing to go to court over it. A judicial recount found Yves-François Blanchet's party lost the riding to the Liberals by a single vote during last month's federal election. But the Bloc is now pointing to a return ballot as the basis to have the election run again. As Dan Spector reports, the voter behind the ballot is now speaking out.
This envelope in the hands of Terrebonne resident Emmanuel Bossé could soon become a key piece of evidence in a high-stakes political courtroom drama. I think this envelope will play a key role in the case, she says. Bossé says she voted for the Bloc Québécois by mail on April 5th, more than 3 weeks before Election Day. She was outraged when she found her ballot back in her mailbox on May 2nd. Anger took a hold of me, she says, and a feeling of injustice that I was not able to vote like everyone else. Her ballot had not been counted because Elections Canada printed the wrong postal code on the envelope. It never made it to its destination. Then this week, she found out after a judicial recount the Bloc lost to the Liberals by just one vote. Now the Bloc says it is planning to challenge the result in court.
In that situation, the law requires the election to be done all over again in the riding of Terrebonne.
Election night results showed Liberal MP Tatiana Auguste won Terrebonne by 35 votes. After a validation process, the Bloc's Nathalie Sinclair Desgagnés was declared winner. Then came the judicial recount, which gave the win back to the Liberals by one vote.
This expression has been used many times before. It's a roller coaster.
I have a legal advice by a lawyer, and we are going forward because the law is clear.
Bossé says Bloc Québécois officials have been in touch with her and told her not to open the envelope as it's important evidence. She's willing to testify in court.
I'll
need to get a suit, she says, confirming she'll vote Bloc again if there is indeed a by-election. Elections Canada told Global News in an email that 5 other mail-in ballots in Terrebonne were not counted because they arrived late, but that there is no evidence their tardiness had anything to do with the postal code blunder. Nitu.
Interesting. Dan Spector reporting tonight. Thanks. The Ontario government has tabled a record $232.5 billion budget in the face of economic upheaval from U.S. tariffs. The province will be running a $14.6 billion deficit this year, $10 billion more than it had planned last year. The aim is to have the deficit down to $7.8 billion in the next fiscal year, followed by a small surplus. The spending includes billions to help manufacturers with tax credits and small businesses with tax deferrals. Russia and Ukraine were set to hold their first direct peace talks in 3 years, but there was no breakthrough in Turkey today. Instead of meeting the Ukrainian president face-to-face, the Russian president was a no-show. As Jackson Prosko reports, that triggered mudslinging and stalled any potential chance to end the bloody war.
Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Turkey with high hopes for a peace deal.
Do you have a message for Vladimir Putin? I'm here.
When it became clear the Russian president wouldn't show, diplomacy devolved into insults. Zelensky slammed the low-level delegation sent by Moscow, calling them props. He refused to meet with them, sending a Ukrainian delegation instead. Russian officials called the Ukrainian president a clown and a loser, and said Zelensky's demand for a meeting with Putin was pathetic.
I just hope that Russia and Ukraine are able to do something.
Already in the region, U.S. President Donald Trump hinted he would join negotiations if Putin did. No formal meeting was ever scheduled.
He wasn't going if I wasn't there, and I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together.
Ukraine is left uncertain of whether a ceasefire is possible as Russia's invasion continues to ravage its territory.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
The Trump administration, which has treated Zelensky as the problem, seems to be coming around to the idea that Putin is in fact the obstacle to peace.
How will that manifest itself in action? We don't know, because up to now, Trump has not imposed a single pressure point on Russia.
Trump is expected to head home Friday, leaving a timeline for future peace talks with Putin up in the air. Jackson Prosko, Global News, Washington.
Palestinians around the world are marking a somber day today, 77 years since the Nakba. Many see it as a time to remember the mass displacement of Palestinians during the birth of the State of Israel and the start of the 1948 war. It's also an opportunity to commemorate the thousands of lives lost decades ago. But this year, it comes during fresh violence. Deadly Israeli strikes on Gaza overnight are sparking renewed calls for urgent action to ease the humanitarian crisis. Redmond Shannon looks at the escalating offensive and the international outcry. A warning his story includes disturbing images.
16 months old and 6 weeks old. A mother identifying her dead sons. Babies Moataz and Moath. May God take revenge, she says. Her surviving children, too, among the injured after an Israeli airstrike on Khan Yunis. Israel's air assault has intensified, and it has not allowed aid to enter the Gaza Strip for 74 days.
We're not immune or in any way insensitive to the suffering of the people of Gaza.
Aid may get through in the coming days, according to a new US-backed foundation tasked with coordinating delivery. But instead of using charities and the United Nations, food will be distributed by private firms protected by Israeli troops.
This particular distribution plan does not accord with our basic principles, including those of impartiality, neutrality, independence.
Aid groups fear that food hubs in southern Gaza could be used to draw Palestinians out of the north.
And I'm calling to the Secretary General to recalculate his approach and to think if he really wants to be involved in the humanitarian aid in Gaza.
As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatens a large ground invasion, Hamas says it is now in direct talks with the US.
We are ready to hand over all the prisoners immediately if we can be sure that this will lead to an end of this war and first and foremost to allow the humanitarian aid to get into Gaza.
Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid has challenged Netanyahu to strike a deal with Hamas, offering to support Israel's fragile government. Two far-right parties that prop up Netanyahu's coalition still oppose any peace deal with Hamas. Neetu?
A lot to watch there. Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Redmond. More disturbing testimony in the World Junior Hockey sexual assault trial coming up. The account of one former player not charged in the case. A former teammate testified today in the World Junior Hockey sex assault trial. Tyler Steenbergen was a member of Canada's 2018 World Junior team and has not been charged in the case. He testified about what he says he saw in the early morning hours of June 19, 2018, and a warning some of the content is graphic. Nathaniel Dove was in court today, and Nathaniel, there were also some legal discussions dealt with in court today.
That's right, Neetu, but a publication ban prevents us from reporting a lot of what happened. What we can say is that the judge sent the jury home early. Before this, though, Tyler Steenbergen, a member of the 2018 team who has not been charged in the case, told the court he was in the hotel room with the 5 accused and the complainant for about 10 to 15 minutes. The complainant, known as EM, accused players Cal Foote, Carter Hart, Michael McLeod, Dylan Dubé, and Alex Fermenton of having non-consensual group sex with her at a hotel in London, Ontario. They have all pleaded not guilty. Steenbergen testified that he witnessed Dubé slap the woman's butt. The assistant crown attorney asked, "And what was the woman doing at the time that Mr. Dubé slapped her?" Steenbergen answered, "I think she just finished giving Carter oral sex." Then Steenbergen says he saw McLeod receive oral sex from the complainant. He stated she was unclothed at the time. Steenbergen then answered questions about a player's group chat he was part of in June 2018, where the group messaged about Hockey Canada contacting them after the alleged assaults. As an example, when Dylan Dubé texted, "Oh yeah, LKE, say you were in the room, but just need to tell the truth about consent because it's fine. If you have consent, we did nothing wrong," Steenbergen testified LKE meant like. The message group also had some of the players asking if it was just Hockey Canada investigating at this point or if the police were also involved. At that time, it was only Hockey Canada. Neetu?
Okay. Nathaniel Dove in London, Ontario. Thank you. Cassie Ventura, ex-girlfriend of music mogul Sean Combs, took the stand for a third time today in his sex trafficking trial. In cross-examination, Combs' lawyers presented loving messages from Ventura to Combs, aiming to show Ventura willingly participated in the relationship. Ventura testified that during their relationship, Combs allegedly raped and blackmailed her by threatening to release private tapes of their sexual encounters. Combs is facing 5 criminal charges and, if convicted, could face life in prison. He has pleaded not guilty. Ahead, life-changing windfall. Meet the BC man who won the largest lotto prize ever won by a single person in Canada. The Edmonton Oilers are through to the Western Conference Final for the second year in a row after winning their series against the Las Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games. The Winnipeg Jets and Toronto Maple Leafs are the other Canadian teams that could still win the Stanley Cup, but both are 1 game away from being eliminated. A BC man has made Canadian history, winning the largest lottery jackpot by a single individual. Today, Justin Simporios claimed his $80 million winnings from the province's May 9th Lotto Max draw.
I'm an immigrant. I came from a poor country. Like, this money's a lot, right? With this amount of money, I'll be able to spend more time with my daughter, with my wife, with my family. Like, it's awesome.
The 35-year-old says he resigned from his job by email just before today's news conference. He says he has plans to give back to his community, but first he wants to buy his dream home and retire his mom. First meeting next, how children of a Canadian soldier found out about each other and honored their father's service. A Nova Scotia man and his Dutch half-sister recently got the chance to meet for the very first time. They're children of a Canadian soldier who helped liberate the Netherlands from Nazi Germany 80 years ago. Neither sibling knew the other existed until a DNA test made the connection. Heidi Petracek looks at the family reunion decades in the making.
This is the flag that was flying.
When Blair Abbas returned from his recent trip to the Netherlands, he brought not just souvenirs, but knowledge of family he never knew he had.
I now have somebody else that I can be with and have this link, this living link to my father.
Abraham Abbas from Sydney, Nova Scotia, there on the right, fought during the liberation of the Netherlands in 1945, and like many, remained there several months after the battle ended, awaiting passage home. Once he returned to Cape Breton, Abraham married, had 4 kids, and never talked about the war.
He said to me, the only ones that talk about the war are the ones that weren't in the really bad battles.
So imagine Blair's surprise when 40 years after his parents died, he got a message through a DNA testing company, news of a half-sister overseas. You see, historians have documented that joyous post-war celebrations back then often led to jubilant trysts between Allied soldiers and Dutch women.
There are about 7,000 children are born in the Netherlands out of Canadian soldiers and officers.
The so-called liberation babies often never knew their fathers and vice versa. So while it was too late for Abraham, Blair and his daughter traveled to Amsterdam in April.
You need to take that leap of faith.
Now 71, Blair met his half-sister Deanie, 8 years older, for the first time.
And never did I expect the amount of love and caring that I got, even from a woman that didn't speak English. All she could speak to me with was her eyes.
Learning about your history in this way, it's a gift that I will never take for granted.
The gift of a new family that took more than 70 years to receive. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Wow, what a special moment. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada showcases East Barrier Lake in BC, the Canadian flag and the Métis Nation Saskatchewan flag in Blaine Lake, Saskatchewan, and a post office in Port Howe, Nova Scotia. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.